Honoring Joe Mahan, and this man, Gene Klein, has known Joe Mahan longer than anybody here, probably including Katie. He was a student of Joe's at Reinhardt College, and I'm real happy that Gene is here and that he has brought his bride along, Stephanie. Smile, Stephanie. What is the name of these horses?
Grace and Ed.
You sure that that's a girl horse? The boy horse? Mm-hmm. You gonna take us to ride? How much is the fee?
Oh, nothing.
Well, that's nice. Thank you. Well, there's one thing I can tell. There's no need to take pictures from the wagon.
Well, that means not me.
Hot in there. Nobody else knows that.
I followed his tire tracks on the way down here.
Work tonight because the letter said be festive. That's right.
I just thought maybe that you were part of it.
No, I'm really not part of it.
They heard going to get a divorce after being married for 72 years. Said, well, we decided to wait till all the children died. Well, Alvin Hart said one time that the best audience is intelligent, well-educated, and a little drunk. And now I'm looking at that, you know, about a little drunk. So from now on, this is serious. This is a court of law. Very serious business is going to be conducted here today. They call this the Hall of Justice. That's about the only place to get justice in the hall. This is the guilty part, the defendant right here. Mahan. He's being defended by Mr. Morton Harris as attorney. This is the prosecutor over here of Morton, Alabama. We granted him one-time free to come over here and Georgia to practice the law and other sales. We prosecute this case today. Before we get started, I'm reading the charges that's against Dr. Mahan. He's being charged with being an inspirational visionary. In the law, you know, words have a little different meaning than they do in polite society. Inspirational is another word for stimulus or stimulating. In the state of Georgia, it's against the law to stimulate another person. Even if the other person is adult and guilty of her consent to be stimulated. Visionary is another word for idealist. An idealist is one who, upon noticing that a rose smells better than a cabbage, concludes that a rose would also make better soup. There's been charges in addition to these made against Dr. Mahan. It's been said that he is bilingual and that his sisters attest him. And that he commits premarital indigitation with his dating wife. He's further charged with being the most overrated and underrated historian in town. History is much too serious to be left for historians. He's been charged with admitting plagiarism by saying that history repeats itself and historians repeat each other. He's also charged with being an egotist. An egotist being defined as a self-made man who worships his creator. Back up that charge. Dr. Mahan was quoted as saying, if I had a little humility, I'd be perfect. He's also charged with making quite a name for himself, this court being respectful as it is, it's too respectful to tell him what that name is. As part of his defense, Dr. Mahan asserts that he suffered from being misunderstood, but there are those who say that he would have suffered a hell of a lot more if he'd been understood. So, these are the charges that are against Dr. Mahan. In this particular court, one is guilty of proven innocent. Prosecutor, he's still on this land. Also stole all this land from me. That's a hanging offense, ain't it? Well, we're going to have to hurry up and get through this trial. It's a fair trial, so we can take that name before we start. Of course, I really believe that Dr. Mahan may have the perfect defense to all these charges. It's sanity defense. That'll be up to him to raise it. So at this time, I'll prosecutor make an open statement if you want
plea of insanity. And so that you do not think that this is a frivolous plea, I have a particulars that I'd like to present to the court for your consideration. May it please the court. This defendant, Joe Mahan, has an honest belief that he is able to go back in time. And oftentimes when he comes down here to Westville, as he goes through that Gothic gate, he will emerge himself into the 1850s. And in 1850, he'll walk down the street and he'll carry on what he perceives to be the current topics of the day. For example, just this afternoon, while walking down the street, he was discussing the fact that Governor George Towns was planning to go to Nashville, Tennessee to meet with the Congress to discuss how they can save the Union and keep California out of the state, out of the Union as a free state. And that was just this afternoon. He also believes in a number of things that I think that needs to be brought to the attention of the court. First, he believes that the Creeks and the Chickasaws and other well-known Indian tribes are indeed the descendants of the 10 lost tribes of Israel. In addition to that, there may be one of his descendants like that. Now, this is, I think he has an excuse for this because he was an avid reader as a young man, and one of the books that he happened to get hold of was the History of the American Indians, published in 1775 by James Adair. And as a result of that, he also believes that the Uchis are descendants of Plato's sunken lost time of their lives. And more recently, showed that he had not lost his verve for wanting to pursue knowledge. He has determined from reading the Antiquities of Mexico that the ancient peoples of that country are a various mixture of Phoenicians, Canaanites, and Hebrew.
All right, order. Raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear that you'll tell the truth or something close enough to the truth, realizing that one may never know the truth about anything, so help you God? Have an objection to that, Mr. Harris?
I'd like to see the document, please.
I thought you might ask for that, and I have an estimate for you.
Seems to be in order.
Well received. There's an incident involving Joe Mahan that I would like to relate, but this is only one among many, many possibilities from an association that has now lasted for over 30 years that it has been my, he says, good fortune to know him. He also says to you, Jurassic Joe, I'm sorry that circumstances have prevented me from being here tonight to relate this in person. I know it is a true incident because, believe me, I was there. Once on a cold and stormy night, cold and stormy late November night in the early 1970s, it was a Sunday night, I'm sure, Joe and I were returning from a trip to Cartersville where we had been on a collecting jaunt for Westville. We were about 15 miles north of the Grange, headed south and hauling a load of donated furniture, tools, and implements. It was a pitch black night and pouring rain. Joe, as only he can, had persuaded donors whose goods were diamonds in the trouble that the only upright, moral, and truly patriotic thing for them to do with their family heirlooms was to place them in his hands on behalf of Westville, where they would serve forever to enlighten generation after generation of Americans, providing for them a realistic and truly wonderful picture of the Old South in all its glory. Amen. We were in an old box body truck which Joe had borrowed from the ever-generous Ed Holloway. Off onto the muddy roadside, I opened the truck door and stepped out into the cold, mid-winter rain. There I was greeted by a Truth County Sheriff's deputy who, after looking me over, slowly informed me that the truck I was driving had not even a suggestion of tail lights and did not know how dangerous that was on such a night in
could he please see my driver's license? While I pled innocent taillight neglect, I produced my driver's license from my wallet. He examined it in the glow of his flashlight with increasing interest and asked if that was the only license that I had. I, being an astute young man and understudy for Dr. Mahan, and a native Alabamian to boot, sensed right away that all was not in perfect order. It was, as it turns out, the Alabama part that got us in trouble. In Alabama, where I had always lived before moving to Lumpkin, licensed drivers are politely notified by the state when it is time to have your driver's license reviewed. Georgia, of course, is not as thoughtful in its service to its citizens. My license had expired unnoticed 2 weeks before. The deputy who invited us to follow him down the road to his headquarters in LaGrange, which we did. And upon arriving there, we were informed that a fine of $50 payable in cash was the penalty for driving with an expired license. By then, it was after midnight, and between the two of us, Joe and myself, we couldn't come close to $50. That was before the days of bank machines, and we were quickly informed that Troup County doesn't take checks from strangers. So lacking sufficient funds to spring us, and with the jail office phone not being available to prisoners, it was agreed between Joe and the jailer that I would remain there as prisoner. While Joe set out on a rainy night on foot to beg or borrow the necessary funds for bail. Hopefully, Waits Henry or another arranged friend of Joe's would soon come to our rescue. Well, Joe was gone a long time, well over an hour, but despite that, I kept a faith of sorts, expecting to be sprung at any moment. Finally, Joe returned, soaking wet, cold, and red-faced. His calls had found nobody at home. Joe then turned his attention to the attending jailer who was sitting at his desk, heavily involved with the Playboy magazine and a package of Eat Snacks crackers. Now listen here, said Joe to the jailer in a firm and authoritative voice. I happen to be an upstanding and highly respected citizen of Columbus and have important friends here in LaGrange too. I want you to know keeping us here like this is ridiculous. I demand to be released. We'll send the money to you tomorrow. I'll even sign an IOU. Now you let us go right now, or you'll hear from this later. The deputy, without looking up, responded like this. I don't give a blank who you are, buddy. Without $50 cash, you ain't going nowhere. There was a moment of silence, but Joe, with renewed calm and with a characteristic persuasive tactfulness, convinced the jailer to call and awaken his sleeping boss, the High Sheriff of Troup County. The sheriff, at Joe's continued insistence, reluctantly contacted Jack Rutledge, the singing sheriff of Muskogee County, who immediately vouched for us, or at least for Joe, because he sure didn't know me. We were then set loose to continue homeward, finally arriving in Columbus a little before dawn on Monday morning. The weather had finally cleared, as it very nearly always does after going through a storm with Joe Mahan.
I'd like to tell you a little anecdote. I don't think it can match that one on Joe. He liked to meld his and mix his interests and his friends, and I think this sort of shows that a little bit. One morning at 8 a.m., there was a knock on our back door. There stood genial Joe Mahan, obviously wide awake at this hour. Open up your front door, says he. We did, and before our dumbfounded eyes loomed a huge Greyhound bus right at our front steps. We It was a sight I will never forget. For a minute, we even thought we might be in a time warp. They were Oklahoma Indians who had never seen peanuts growing and asked to see some. And Joe knew that we had some across the road from our house, so he obliged me. They were appearing in Columbus on a TV show very shortly, hence the costumes. Our nerves shattered for the day. We picked up our coffee cups, drained them, and poured more. What a difference an S makes. Put an S at the end of the word trial, and you get the trial of Joe Mahan, trials of Joe Mahan. I'm sure he would be the best defense for this because of the trials that we put him through. We tested him, we coached, we badgered him. As we restored the Bettyfield Inn on the square in London, Joe was our best source for what to do and how to do it. Without his invaluable advice, this beautiful building might never have been as authentically restored, or even restored at all. Is being a con man what Joe is on fire for? I must tell you that he is guilty as charged. He convinced us poor, naive, innocent victims that we could buy the Bettyfield Inn, restore it, and furnish it appropriately. The building was a dilapidated wreck, an eyesore on the square. We did do it. Joe Mahan made us believe that we could do it. This elegant building still reigns as the queen of the Lumpkin Square. When Colonel West's property came up for sale, it was time for Joe to bring out the big Tommy guns. He convinced a few leaders who became sold on the concept of Westville, a rural town of 1850, placed just outside London. Joe wrote a grant to the Coastal Plains, and they believed him and gave him funds to make Westville an educational project, and also to help move in the buildings, the suitable buildings from the West Collection. Mr. D.A. Turner believed in Joe, giving him seed money for the project. Over time, many others began to believe in Joe's vision and generously gave funds to help create this small town in a little known and neglected section of Georgia. Dr. Mahan could sell kudzu to a South Georgia farmer. However, it was not easy to convince the skeptical that Westville was really going to happen. It was too unbelievable. The scope was enormous and terrifying. It just couldn't happen, could it? Joe does not think small. The planning and development of Westville took time. Briefly, it too did happen. Westville today has had far-reaching effects, educationally, of course, being named.
We have any objection to this witness, Mr. Mayor?
No, Your Honor.
All right.
One of my first questions is, what year is this? 18 what?
Well, you might all join him.
I'm really getting at how much per hour is this gentleman charging Joe Mahan? Well, the going rate just goes 25 cents an hour. Then we all know what Mr. Harris since the day my wife introduced me to this esteemed gentleman. And everything he has ever done, he has done real well, including conning me on several occasions.
Why you want to go?
Except about one small gate. Joe came to me one day about 6 months after he and Fred Fussell had caught all the airmen from North Georgia by way of the ground. He said, Sam, we have some valuable things at Westville now, and we need a gate. I was real busy. It was the fall of the year. And I knew that Westville deserved a nice gate. And I knew that Red Martin had just built a nice white fence, and I knew he was going to put a nice aluminum gate. I knew that the Bradley Company had several nice aluminum gates on their farm, and Mr. Colonel afford anything more. So I said, Joe, get him out of the way. I said, Joe, I'll buy you a gate. He says, thank you. About 3 days later, he said, Sam, I need to go show you the gate we want. Well, I had a guy, Red Boy, I had in my mind, Albert Colonel. And I said, which one do you want to see, Joe, Mr. Colonel's or Red? He says, that's not what I want. Westville and that. And I said, well, there's a 4-foot high. You want a 6-foot one? I said, let me show you the gate, and I want Westville to lay. I said, okay, please. He said, don't you have an airplane? I said, yes, sir. He said, we need to fly a minute. I said, something crazy. So I said, Joe, how are we going? Joe said to me, he said, after we land down, this gate is about 10 miles from the airport. He said, do you know anyone up there? I said, well, I think still in that county, the county unit system still operates. So I think I can get the state patrol to take us wherever we want to go. So we went to Milledgeville, got the state patrol car, and I thought we were headed out to the country. And we go to downtown Milledgeville. And we drive up to this place, and I looked up, and that was a doggone gate you ever saw. There's the gate. I had already made my commitment. We flew back. I'm studying some way to get out of this trap.
You think about crashing?
2 or 3 days later, Henry Lynch was working for me. And Henry came to me and he said, Joe Mahan wants me to go to Milledgeville to look at the gate. I said, well, it's going to rain tomorrow. Go on. Next morning, Henry came back to work after he'd been to Milledgeville. He said, Sam, there's enough brick and mortar in that gate to build 4 houses. He says that gate is 60 feet wide, 5 feet deep, and 30 feet high. But anyway, it all goes through. And I thought, I was pretty good at calling all this myself. It goes through. Joe Mahan is better at calling all this the same thing. I have to throw my client
historian, I believe. Is that right?